What's going on, guys? On today's episode, I am going to continue my coverage with breaking down episode 4 of Convicting a Murderer. It's the 10-episode journey that Candace Owens is taking us on to set the record straight by exposing hidden evidence in the murder of Teresa Halbach. The series started with first 3 episodes dropping last week on the DailyWire Plus, and then, of course, weekly episodes leading up until the finale on October 26th. Episode 4 dropped on September the 15th. September the 14th, sorry. All right, this week's episode is titled Shifting Timelines. The episode description is missing 15 seconds from the dispatch call that was used as quote-unquote proof of the police bias against Steven Avery is revealed. Steven Avery's behavior towards Teresa Halbach's murderer becomes increasingly concerning. All right, so we start the episode off with, we hear a phone call with Jody stating that why wouldn't you go and murder Teresa? Why would you go murder Teresa because she wouldn't fuck you? So you had to murder her because she turned your ass down. Now, Earl, Steven's brother, says, part of me wants to believe he didn't do this, but part of me believes that he did do it. It's this entire thing is crazy to me. Like, you are weeks away from cashing millions of dollars, and yet you find yourself in the center of another controversy. That's the whole thing that blew my mind, is understanding that he was in the midst of, and sure, on the flip side of that, people were like, oh, well, that's the reason why that they believe he was set up, is because they didn't want to pay the money, et cetera, et cetera. But Earl said something in this episode that I feel like really stood out. I think he did it because he thought he would get away with it. When you get out of jail for murder, you may or may not have committed, but in this instance, didn't commit. He had this feeling of invincibility. And I believe if Steven Avery did kill Teresa Halbach, that is part of what happened here. Part of what happened was he had it in his mind that he felt untouchable. And because of that, if somebody doesn't give you what you want, in this instance, Teresa, he felt the need to really drive home what he did. Now, of course, in this instance, he said to Jody that he felt untouchable and told investigators that. He did say to Jody that all bitches owe him, allegedly, is what he told Jody, because of the 18 years he spent in jail for what he didn't do. We see Candace heading to the Avery lot. And what I didn't know, that this has become like a tourist attraction, which is even wild to think about. Of course, we see Steven. This entire auto trader thing was wild to me, right? Steven called the auto trader to reel back in the same person, Teresa, to come take some pictures. Instead of using his name, knowing that she wouldn't come if she saw it possibly, he used his sister's name to get her out. Now, in the making of The Murderer, they left out a portion of Teresa's voicemail. Now, this is part of the highlighting of the inefficiencies between what we saw in Making a Murderer on Netflix and the actuality of what was really said in the actual phone call. Now, in the Netflix series, you hear, if you could please give me a call back and let me know if that will work for you. It stopped there. So they use that as a motive, as a possibility of, the not knowing factor. You know what I'm saying? Like the not knowing that she knew where she was going, but wanted to get that call back. However, it stopped there. The real voicemail states, if you could please give me a call back and let me know if that will work for you. I don't have your address. I can't stop by without getting a call from you. That's the part that's definitely weird, Like, why would they omit so many different things? Like, how do you leave out the answering machine that reveals Teresa didn't know where she was going? That's the part that's insane to me. Like, they left out the fact that he called her back twice, star 67, blocking the number. Now, of course, the investigator says, I guess he didn't understand that, we could trace the star 67 phone calls from his call records, but he would block the calls straight from his phone. I don't understand. We don't get that information either. And then, of course, we have the problem is that Mark Weiger eventually called the police to see if they knew anything about the whereabouts of Teresa. Of course, Steven blatantly lies about seeing or not seeing Teresa on the site. That again, what's crazy is Making a Murderer was well equipped with its cliffhanger to continuously put doubt in the audience's mind as whether or not the cops were trying to frame Steven Avery. It's wild to me that the producers of Making a Murderer almost treated this as a scripted series. And it even seems like it, right? It's definitely fascinating when you watch this. You are clinging onto every single word that's being said. When that next episode, you were ready to press next episode as fast as humanly possible when watching the show. Like, you want to move on, you want to go, you want to get it going, you want all these things to happen. And it's crazy to me how they edited it to the episode. Now, credit to them. Obviously, they built a mass phenomenon, but we're talking about a murder here. We're talking about putting into question whether or not this man was actually, did exactly what he did. Now, the other thing that really, really, really kind of really made me was crazy. Hold on one second here. I'm trying to find my exact note. Yes. So in the show, in Making a Murderer, they have this phone call, and it's a conversation between dispatch and the cop, and it says, "Do we have Steven Avery in custody?" It was a cliffhanger on the episode, and the episode ended there. One, you hear this, you're like, I got to click next because I got to see what's happening. Now, they use this phone call because they were calling regarding a body-only warrant arrest for body-only warrant arrest. He says this, okay? When he says this, it's the rest of the dispatch. Call is as follows. I heard there's a body-only warrant. Do we have Steven Avery in custody? That's where it ends. However, the rest of the call plays out, and you hear, "I have no idea," from Detective Jacobs, saying that he had heard somebody else was taken in on a body-only warrant, so he assumed, in this case wrongly, that it was Avery, but dispatch said it was someone else that was picked up on site. How do you go from ending it on, "Do we have Steven Avery in custody?" and then not playing the rest of that 911 call or the dispatch conversation with the detective? Instead, you leave that completely out of the thing. Like, they painted this picture of him of they already had the preconceived notion that they were going to bring him to jail. That's crazy. Like, how is that not into the conversation? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how we're continuously missing out on certain things, and the unusual behavior of Steven Avery. On October 31st, Steven Avery took off work at 11 a.m. but didn't go back to work because he got quote unquote lazy. He called a personal phone twice using star 67. There was no phone activity by either Teresa or Steven for 2 hours after Steven said Teresa had arrived. Teresa called Teresa to come back to take a photo of a loader. He went to cell after Teresa had already left and didn't block the number. Steven changed his story several times at different parties regarding the interactions with Teresa on Halloween. It's crazy to me. Again, as the episode kept on going here, they painted this picture of him not crushing the car right away. And Earl said he ran out of time. It's people, they painted this idea that, oh, well, if he did it, he would have crashed the car right away. And then, of course, Earl explains that you have to take all the tires off, the fluids have to be drained. So he had a plan to do it, just the time ran out for him. And that's, to me, what's very interesting in this thing is the walls were closing in. You know what I mean? Like the walls were slowly but surely closing in on him, and he didn't know what to do. And that to me is fascinating, right? You know what I mean? The theory that he intended to crush the car next Saturday after the office closed at noon, but ran out of time to prep the car and crush it. Instead, he shoved it somewhere that, you know, nobody would quote unquote find. And it's funny because everybody's like, oh, he found it, she found it, you know, so fastly, which was not true either. Yeah. So that's another key thing here. Andy, rookie, aka here, a justice advocate, says he talked about how he isn't here to defend Steven Avery, but says he's here to say the cops weren't truthful in how they investigated the trial. He mentioned Ken Kratz, the guy that the district attorney here used wild tactics in the courtroom that shouldn't have been used to get the jury to believe that Steven Avery was guilty. The director here asked Andy, if we got you in the same room with Ken, would you like to ask him those questions yourself? We fast forward to series 8 months later, and we see Ken and Andy getting ready to sit down and chat. And then, of course, that's our cliffhanger for this week's episode. Again, one thing that I would like to point out here is that Candace and her team are willing to have somebody like Andy who doesn't corroborate their story on the documentary. He doesn't fit into the truth that they are seeking. However, I love this because both sides of the fence are going to go head to head, and I can't wait for that next episode. Again, there's storytelling as well, except for their storytelling doesn't include fixing a narrative any which way. It's having the conversation and putting the doubts of the questions of what making the murderer put inside everybody's head. As with that being said, overall, Convicting a Murderer continues to deliver the goods, trying to find out the truth of whether or not Steven Avery murdered Teresa Hallback and what the producers of Making a Murderer left out in order to build this story that opened the door to this culture phenomenon. As we continue on this trek, the one thing I have to continuously credit Candace Owens for is she's promised to deliver nothing but facts. And through 4 episodes, we've got nothing but facts. Again, this isn't trying to fit a narrative. This isn't trying to spin anything other than presenting us with the idea and presenting us with factual evidence that are presented, whether it's voicemails, whether it's court dockets, whether it's police records, whatever have you. It's not made up information. We're getting presented the information that was missing from Making a Murder. And why that's one thing that I want to say about this is you don't have to look either way. Just figure out, you listen to both sides and then you take it from there. So that's the part that I'm trying to do myself. I'm not 100% on each other's side, but I want to be on this journey and I want to figure out how, what, who, what, when, where, and how. You know what I'm saying? So that being said, episode 4 is on the DailyWire Plus right now. So if you want to check it out, go over there. Let me know your thoughts of this week's episode.